Chapter 16. They spent a comfortable night in the guest house. A dozen of Salethan's men remained on guard outside, but the visitors were allowed to leave the house and walk around the intermediate vicinity if they chose to. They were served food and drink, fruit juices and water in leather case. The food was delicious. Cold fowl of some kind, served with salad greens, with a distinctive sharp lemon dressing and fresh flatbread. Horace tore at a leg of fowl and crammed vast amounts of bread into his mouth. "This is all right," he said enthusiastically. "We're doing well for prisoners." "We're not prisoners," Halt reminded him. "We're diplomatic delegation." Horace nodded. "I keep forgetting," he said, spraying breadcrumbs in all directions. Halt quickly backed away. Then the warrior's attention was distracted by a half-dismembered bird on the platter before him, and he rummaged through the pieces. "Any more legs?" he asked, to no one in particular. "If they invent a four-legged chicken," Will said, "Horace will think he's gone to heaven." Horace nodded in agreement. "Four-legged chicken," he said. "Great idea. We should get Master Chubb on that." He found another leg and wasted no time ripping large shreds from it with his teeth. Gillen watched with some curiosity. "I don't recall him eating this much when we were in Celtica," he said. Horace grinned. "We didn't have this much to eat in Celtica," he said. "Besides, I felt a little overawed and nervous in the company of you mysterious rangers." "And they don't make you nervous any more?" Evelyn asked, her eyes smiling as she sliced a peach in half. The fruit was really delicious, she thought. Perhaps it had something to do with the hot climate. "Not in the slightest," Horace said. He was grinning now, as he did remember that there was a time when he had been distinctly unsure of himself in the presence of a ranger. First with Gillen and Will in Celtica, then later in the company with Halt when he had crossed Gallica. Odd to think that they were now his closest friends. "I've learned since then. Halt's really just a pussy cat," he added. Will and Gillen both snorted in an unsuccessful attempt to conceal their laughter. Halt's eyebrow rose frantically as he regarded the grinning young man. "A pussy cat," he repeated. Svengal had been watching this exchange with interest. Now he joined in with a loud guffaw. "More like a battered old tomcat, I'd have thought," he said. Halt's withering gaze swung to the big Scandian, who remained absolutely unwithered. "Everyone's a comedian all of a sudden," Halt said. "I think I'll go to bed." He exited the room, and with a little dignity that remained to him. Breakfast was served in the internal courtyard the following morning, an hour after sunup. The air was fresh with the morning sea breeze, but already they could feel the coming heat of the day. The three rangers were delighted to find, among the platters of flatbread, slices of fruit, preserves, and jars of juice, a pot of hot, rich, black liquid. "Coffee," Gillen said, reverently, pouring himself a cup. There was brown sugar to sweeten it, and he spotted it in, while Halt and Will also helped themselves. Evelyn shook her head at the sight of them. "If a person ever wanted to capture you three," she said, "he'd just have to bait the trap with a pot of coffee." Will nodded. "And we'd go gladly," he agreed. Then he added to the others, "This is really good coffee." "Should be," Halt said, leaning back with his cup and putting his booted feet on the low table in front of him. "The Iridian invented it." "Everyone sleep well?" In fact, most of them had slept patchily, unsure of the sensation of a bed that didn't roll and pitch rhythmically beneath them. But the mattress had been soft, and the bedrooms were cool and well ventilated. They were discussing the phenomenon that Svengal described as land wobbles, which most seafarers feel when they first go ashore after a long voyage. When one of the servants entered and bowed to Halt. "Captain Salethan is here, sir." "Ask him to come in," Halt said, removing his feet from the table and rising to greet the Iridia officer as he entered the courtyard. As before, Scylla then made a hand gesture to his lips, brow, and lips again in greeting. "Good morning, my lady and gentlemen. Is everything satisfactory?" Holt returned the hand gesture, greeting, and motioned for the captain to have a seat. "Excellent. Everything is excellent. Will you join us for coffee?" he offered, but Scylla shook his head regretfully. "Sadly, I have duties to attend to." He glanced at Svengal. "Your men have been given breakfast, Captain. There is no need to check." Svengal nodded. The previous evening, he had made a point of visiting the ship and making sure his men were being looked after. They had their own private supplies on board, of course, but they felt they should be fed by the Aridi, as they were part of an official delegation. "Thank you," he said gruffly. Scylla turned back to Holt and Evelyn now. "Now, His Excellent, the Wakir, will be delighted to receive you at the 10th hour," he said. Evelyn glanced uncertainly at Holt, and he made a discreet hand gesture, signaling her to answer. "That is suitable to us," she said. Scylla smiled and drew himself to attention. "I will escort you," he said. "I will be back 15 minutes before the 10th hour. Please be ready to leave at that time." Evelyn said nothing, looking away with a disinterested expression. Princesses didn't respond to orders, Will realized. "We will be ready," Holt said. He and Scylla exchanged a graceful hand gesture of greeting and farewell once more, and they already backed away a few paces before turning to leave. Horace, watching, marveled at the ease at which Holt fitted into the situation. He said as much to Will as they returned to the room they were sharing, and he was surprised at his friend's gloomy response. "I know. He's amazing, isn't he?" Will said. "He always knows exactly what to do and say." Horace looked at him curiously, wondering his less than enthusiastic manner. He had no idea that Will had been thinking exactly the same thing, and comparing himself to his master, a comparison that he found less than favorable. Once again, Will was wondering how he would even cope as a ranger in his own right. 15 minutes before Scylla was due to return, Holt summoned Will and Gillen to his room. The two younger men entered curiously, wondering what their leader had in store for them. As it turned out, it was a pleasant and very welcoming change to their equipment. "Leave your cloaks here," Holt told them. They noticed he was not wearing his. They're designed for the heirloom climate, not Arida, and there's not a lot of forest and greenery around these parts. He was right, Will thought. The green and gray mottled cloaks were designed to blend into the background colors of their fertile homeland, not the dry, sun-baked vistas that formed themselves now. The heavy wool was decidedly uncomfortable in the Aridi heat, yet the rangers were used to them, and Will was reluctant to discard his. Holt was opening a pack that he had brought from the ship. He withdrew a folded garment from it now, shook it out, and passed it to Gillen. It was a cloak, a cowled ranger's cloak, Will saw. But instead of the random green and gray colors they were used to, this one was unevenly mottled in varying shades of light brown. Furthermore, realized Will, as Holt produced a second cloak and handed it to him, it was made of a heavy-duty linen, not wool. "Summer issue," said Holt. "Cooler in the heat and a lot better for what we have to blend into in the background here." Gillen was already swinging his cloak around his shoulders. He looked at it, impressed. It was definitely more comfortable than the winter weight cloak he had laid across his back of the chair. Will donned his, examining the coloring at closer quarters. He liked the familiar feel of the garment, the confidence that came with the ability to blend into the countryside and seem to disappear. The ability had become very much part of his life in recent years. "Where did you get these from?" he asked. Holt regarded him quizzically. "We have visited these parts before, you know. Crowley had the castle heirloom quartermaster make some up the moment he heard we were coming here." He waited for Gillen and Will as they moved the cloaks experimentally, eyeing each other and studying the unusual colors, seeing how they would blend into the landscape of rock and desert that surrounded Al-Shabaab. "All right, ladies," he said. "If you're finished with the fashion show, let's go meet the Wakir."